Meeting to order, and welcome everyone today. Nice beautiful day, supposed to be a better one even tomorrow. 9/11, I'm sure we all are aware of that, and got a glimpse of what's going on up in New York to notice and memorialize and so forth, and so I'll keep that in our thoughts and prayers. First of all, I'll ask, is there any adjustments to the agenda briefing items?
From the staff side, we closed session for legal matter.
All right. So closed session edition. One to 10.
Do you know statutes on that?
I brought one in here, but I don't know where it got to. Thank you. All right, is there anything else from our side or staff side?
143-318.11A3.
I'm sorry, one more time, Doug.
143-318.11A3.
A3. Okay. All right, we'll add that on towards the end then. All right, anything else? All right, we'll call for a motion to adopt the agenda for today.
I'll make that motion with an added closed session.
Okay, do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. All those, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. All right, it's passed unanimously. We will move to general business. Item 2. Let's see here. All right, mayor and council comments. I will start with Eddie. Sir?
All righty, thank you. Being 9/11 today, I would just like to take a minute and remember all the victims of that terrible day at the Pentagon, at Shanksville, and New York, and remember all our heroes that day that responded and took care of the situation. Very, very sad day, and probably one of the best days because the United States of America came together that day and was one. So as good as it was terrible. But just in remembrance of all the victims and the heroes that day. And then on another note, I'm excited. Town manager and I met with a NASCAR owner about the potential of possibly in the near future, I shouldn't say near, in the future, moving a NASCAR team into the town of Troutman. So it's exciting news and could be really good and great for the town of Troutman in the future. Thank you for his time and appreciated it, and I think that some good will come out of it.
Certainly look forward to it. Certainly do. Thank you. Harris?
Just a couple of things. I visited the fair. We had good weather for the fair this year, so up until Saturday, so I think they probably really did pretty good this year. Because when I was there on Thursday, I was on Friday and Thursday. The other is, I missed that morning because I had a doctor's appointment, but we had the ribbon cutting for the volleyball courts and stuff, and those and their affiliates stuff. They've done a great job. I went and looked at it later. And, you know, if you haven't seen it, you know, it's a lot of work, good work went out there. The fall flags are up. I went down and I covered a radio show for Duck last week. He couldn't be there, and so I let them know that they were putting up the flags. When I started out of town, when I came back, they had them, all of them. We're the last 2, I think, at that time. But as we changed over, and even the weather's kind of changed. The flags kind of helped. It cooled off a little bit. So that was good. But then the other one is, Eddie mentioned the victims and all, and I was watching a 60 Minutes special last time about the first responders, and just you know, that those guys, you know, they suffer a lot. And I'd like to think we were lucky enough to have Eddie, one of our first responders, sitting here with us, and I feel honored to have him with us.
Thank you.
Sarah?
From a different perspective, with 911, my son and I had to take him to the doctor this morning, and he said, "Mom, today's 911." I got him out of school. They did their tribute this morning, at both the times when the planes hit. And he said, Mom, he said, where were you that day and how did you feel? And I got sad all over again because I remember exactly where I was and exactly how I felt at that moment. But, just explain it to him, and he starts Googling and looking up things, and, just his genuine interest. He just wanted to know how it was and how it felt. And I said, it felt terrible, at that time. So my heart goes out to those victims 22 years ago for that terrible day. So second thing, good news, good thing. Glad that football season is upon us for South Iredell. And of course my son is in the band, so I have to brag on the band too. They're doing really, really good. And it was good to see the parade out there. Even if my husband was picking up my son and missed it. So he said, where's the parade? I said, honey, it was only about 5 minutes long. So, but still, it was just good to see the town out there and see everybody out there enjoying the band and the parade and everybody else who was in the parade. And we went to the fair as well. I only go to the fair to eat. And the food was very good, so I let my kids run around and I eat. So, and again, like George mentioned, the volleyball courts look very, very good out there. So thankful to everyone who helped make that happen.
Yeah, it's I echo everybody's comments on 9/11. It's easy to forget, I think the older we get, that there's a lot of adults out there that have no concept of what it was like that day. So, yeah, you stirred it back with me. Like, I remember where I was. I remember how I felt. So, yeah. But again, also I was able to attend the fair with the family. My kids are now at that age that I had to ride. I usually just go to eat. You and I could be fair buddies, but give me a few more years till they can clear that line where they can ride by themselves. But kids, and me and the wife had an absolute blast. I think it was a great event for our town. But also, one thing that I'm very pleased to see around town is that we seem to have a lot of budding small businesses opening up. And that just warms my heart. I know that one thing that, at least from my own perspective, a lot of people want to keep Troutman as Troutman, and I think that's one of the best ways that we can do it is controlling our own economy, and supporting each other and supporting locally. So I know all up and down Main Street we've gotten businesses that are opening up, which I think is just a great sign for our town, and really makes me happy. But that's all I got. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, sir. Coop?
I'd like to just add one thing too. I would like to congratulate our fellow council member and his wife on the great news of opening up the restaurant. Best of luck, and glad to see it.
Thank you. And we do have sauerbraten on the menu for you.
All right.
Looking out for you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep. Well, as always, being the last, I get to enjoy all the positive comments from my fellow council folks, and I agree wholeheartedly. And in regards to what Felina said, I too remember where I was that day and what I was doing. Same as when John Kennedy was killed. Obviously, you don't remember that. I do. So, starting with that, I know where I was when, unfortunately, Dr. Martin Luther King suffered the same fate as President Kennedy and so forth. So, a lot of sad memories that I'm old enough to remember where I was, what I was doing. When Kennedy was assassinated, I was, of course, still in high school and was actually in a U.S. history class when word was sent to the principal's office, the teacher, of what happened, and she announced it. So at any rate, and then coming up to 2011, the same thing. So when you live long enough, you see a lot of good, but you also, unfortunately, witness and feel and see a lot of bad as well in humanity. And I also agree that, or concur that all the success in the world to your business, opening or keeping open the German restaurant. It's got it has a very good reputation among people. All I've been in touch with, and I'm sure you will take it and run with it, and you will, will do a wonderful job, even making it better. And I look forward to it and do all I can to support it with me and my family and so forth. And I agree, it's great small businesses. Obviously, we need the large ones too, but along Main Street, you like to see those small ones, and that's you're right. That's good, and I hope they're all very successful and are with us for a very long time. With that, sir, anything from staff?
I would just like to, without getting in trouble this time, just echo, I don't think a large portion of our citizenry now take time to reflect the freedoms that we lost because of 9/11. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to give a speech amongst a large population of people who have no clue the freedoms that we did enjoy prior to. And taking a little bit of what Eddie said, I lost and continue to lose friends who unknowingly went in to protect a lot of people on 9/11, and because of the cancers and things that they, fumes and things that happened that day, have had a slow death because of 9/11. And Eddie and I have mutual friends that we've lost because of that. And it's a shame. And then when you try to explain to people the freedoms that we lost, and to Eddie's point, how this country, it was a very tragic, one of the most tragic in our history as America. But then when you try to explain the patriotism that came out of it and how we came together as a country, what appears to be, albeit for a very short time, there was very much negatives, very horrific, but there was also positive. And then when you try to explain to people what a great country it is we live, but yet we were attacked because of that, it just, the words can never be appropriate to explain the extremes of both. And to me, it's sad that even when somebody tries to explain the extremes and our freedoms, to go and come. If you love it, stay here. If you don't, buy a ticket and leave. That you're attacked even in trying to explain. But I'll stop there. I'll get in trouble again trying to explain that. But I just want to say that yes, once again, publicly, I'm appreciative of all the partners that it took to have our beach volleyball course come together. Staff for our transition from summer to our fall, as we transition seasons, and a couple departments, Parks and Rec, Public Works. Our officers also transitioned from the summertime of law enforcement also to our fall as we got back to school. Just a reminder, as Chief can confirm, I'm sure, with his report that he gives Thursday night, our law enforcement even changes because our population, once again, as people used to think, we joked when we said our population doubles when school's in session. It's not a joke. It does. A couple hours in the morning, it doubles as people come into our town to attend the schools. And as I have said publicly before, small town Troutman has as many Iredell Statesville schools with a population that's the 10th the size of the city of Statesville. For some reason that don't make sense to me, but that is the reality. We do have that many schools here. And when we get bashed publicly that we're not forward thinking enough about the schools, that's not you all's job as elected officials to build the schools. But yes, we forward that information to the county and to the schools of these neighborhoods, and it is on their radar. And I'm not going to dare get in trouble of saying how long has it been since they bought land. I mean, they've had several years to debate the last school and still are debating the school that is to be built there. But that is one of the tragedies that we have to deal with as a town, of what to do with all that population that joins our town daily, and then 2 hours in the afternoon they try to leave. That is another thing that has changed in America. Most, I won't say, there's not many in our age group, this section of the room, but when we went to school, most of us rode the school bus. Very few didn't. Now that has changed to where there's more that don't ride the school bus than there is. And that's parental choices, whatever that is, I'm not there gonna go out and suggest people do something different, but that's certainly created a difference in what happens in our public streets and roads. As far as the state streets and roads, and as far as the town streets. But our law enforcement is dealing with it as best they can. And of course, their numbers have showed the change as well. But I'll stop there, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And
Can I mention something?
Yes, sir.
You all talking about downtown businesses and such. At the last municipal attorney's conference I went to back in August, we had a very good presentation about social districts. Not just that it's a place for people to drink, but some towns were finding that it was actually an economic development tool. Has kept a couple of restaurants from leaving some small towns, attracted a brewery downtown to one small town, and help their downtown. So just from that standpoint, something you might want to think about. But one of the things you have to also be cautioned about is that a lot of businesses don't want it. Just as an example, for instance, bottles and taps might not want people to walk over to the Cedar Stump because they lose a customer, and vice versa. So most towns, if they think about that, that's the first place they start. With all the establishments that would be interested to see if they are interested, because they also have a cost. They have to buy the cups, there has to be the emblem on the cups, and all those kinds of things. And your district could be pretty big. I mean, you could go all the way up to the shopping center up here through downtown. So it's just it was a very good presentation, and I never thought about it from the economic development standpoint.
we've also got, to Gary's point, got complaints already of people leaving such establishments with glass bottles and breaking them in public sidewalks and in public parking areas already.
Sorry to hear that.
So there is value to, it can be an attraction to an area. Just in our short term with only 2 establishments in town, we're already getting complaints that somebody's not watching them and they're leaving them with bottles and they're breaking them in public areas.
Well, at this point in time, now this is, of course, just my opinion, everybody's entitled to his or her, but I would say we'll wait and see if the 2 establishments primarily we're discussing here, if they approach and want us to consider that, then I guess we'll tackle that situation and discuss at that time. But if they don't, then they're not really evidently interested, then I see no reason why. I duly noted, Gary, you're right, I've kept up with it, reading economical articles, and of course, news on TV and so forth, other towns and cities are doing that and within the state, and but you know, if it's something that's not right for Troutman right now, well, we'll leave it as is. But you know, personally, I'd like to see one or both businesses step up and approach us first before we tackle that situation.
Down now, their business, Pellegrino's could potentially be one, so you've got at least 4.
I think it's a conversation to be had that we could invite all businesses, if they have off-site alcohol sales, that invite them for a conversation to where they could have the non-breakables and or be responsible if the bad conduct continues. The business owners themselves, certainly in my opinion, are not wanting that kind of conduct because they want the community to support. They want business.
Right.
And I think it's a conversation, just to Gary's point, if it was a non-breakable cup that had a name, to me, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, at least common denominator. I'd rather have that on the sidewalk than busted shards of glass. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, you say you're invited for conversation. Are you perhaps maybe an informal conversation between meetings, or maybe an agenda briefing? Invite those that are interested to come and talk with us, something like that?
I think it is a trend, especially as we, as a town, has certainly voiced our interest in I'll use Wagner Street as an example. We have voiced, we want eventually, going back to 2017, I believe, that has been the desire that that be a pedestrian area for a business core. I think we might be hoping a little bit if we ask for Pellegrino's Bavarian Kitchen to walk that far. But that's certainly a little hodgepodge. That corridor could be one itself, but Wagner Street could be a corridor itself to where you could have 2 or 3 eventually, depending on how our town grows, that we could certainly have an impromptu meeting with various business owners and divide these up into quadrants and expand and say, hey, as others come online, even though Devastated Vineyards is not in our town limits, we certainly have a draw to that area. It's on some of our signage that people go out there. And even though it's a standalone business, it kind of has its own area that people go there for the consumption of wine. So if we did our downtown court areas, there's 2 or 3 businesses in one area, okay, and even Wagner Street, I certainly think we could facilitate a meeting with some ideas and come back, because I do think not just Troutman, there's other locales, to Gary's point, that it is a thriving, could be a positive. We don't want it going backwards. It's my point.
Sure.
Or getting out ahead of us.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, if I may propose, let you and I, maybe the mayor, preliminarily talk about that. Then we can kind of hold the rest of the members of the council, see how you want to proceed, and impromptu meeting as town manager suggested with some of the business folks, and go from there, okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up. All right, let's see here. All right, I believe our next one is under B, line 2, presentation and consideration of a domestic violence awareness project. Ms. Town Manager, you want to lead us in that one?
Sure thing. Emily, if you would come around over behind me. I have Miss Emily Cowan with My Sister's House. And as you all know, and I put a little message in your packets, Emily has requested that we be aware of domestic and child, mainly domestic violence. But she has an integral role with My Sister's House. Back in the spring, we did the child abuse. And basically, if I understand it, please correct. How about we let you do your presentation instead of me talking?
I'm Emily Cowan. I'm with My Sister's House, the domestic violence program, which is here in Troutman. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are just asking to possibly place purple ribbons, which is the color that represents domestic violence awareness, throughout the Greenway, through Troutman, with the ribbons along with a little informational card. We want to do it to honor victims who have lost their lives to domestic violence, but also to raise awareness. Domestic violence is one of those things that nobody really likes to talk about, but we want to be there as a service and a resource to those victims who are in need. And sometimes just a simple, silent way of representing who we are and what we do, it reaches more individuals than you can imagine. So that's what we're asking, if that's an option, or if you're open to other things, we're open as well.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of the things that I said as I put my note in you all's packets, I think we need to be cautious what we allow on our greenway, just because of the rules of when the greenway was started by previous councils, what we allow and we don't allow. And I certainly am not trying to say that one thing is more important or less important than something else. It's just my personal opinion, when it comes to domestic violence, whether it involves adults or whether it involves children, that is something that is rooted in our communities, unfortunately, to the point that we don't even understand the magnitude. And back from my law enforcement days, and I'm sure the chief can give you even more stories that are more modern, as I've been retired so long, it also matters how we put these things on our greenway. And as Emily said, putting these ribbons around the light poles and or around the trees, it is less intrusive on our staff as far as the mowing and the maintenance goes. And to me, it draws awareness without being gaudy and without causing an undue burden on the staff. And it certainly allows you all, if your desire is to limit how many of these things we allow throughout the year, it certainly can go in conjunction with our child abuse in the spring, the domestic violence in the fall. I certainly have reached out to Emily. I think I called her next to her husband and her father about as much as I'm third in line. Trying to offer assistance for them, because it's one of those, we don't know how much those women need in assistance, and a lot of times they don't have resources. And that's why I think it's important to draw attention as well.
So my understanding is then that this would be something, the month of October, and my sister's house would be coordinating, spearheading, and putting out the ribbons and little note cards and so forth?
Yes, we would do it.
Okay,
If approved.
okay.
And then come back at the end of the month, of course, and
Yes.
take them all right now. Do we do anything for, that's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, do we put anything out for that? We don't, okay.
I wear pink a couple days, that's about it.
That's the only month I can get my kids to wear. My mom passed from breast cancer, that's the only time I get them to wear pink. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, but thank you.
What the town manager was describing, like around the light posts and things, is that what you had in mind, or?
Yes, I was thinking, just to your discretion, whatever you allowed or approved, but that was our idea, was the light post.
Okay, because that's kind of what I think, especially after the town manager's comments, to somewhat agree with him. I think if that's, because it got me thinking about like all the flags, all the, which was beautiful. Not once did I think about the maintenance. So that's if we, with that now in my mind, if these are the types of things that, that people want to do, on a semi-regular basis, I think this is definitely the way to go, especially when it comes to our own staff and what burden we create on them. But, those flags did look good though.
And we even coordinated with them because of the maintenance.
Really? Okay. Thank you.
Y'all have any more questions?
I just think it'd be good to see it. I think it's, domestic violence is one that we definitely need to bring out.
I think it's a good thing.
I think with as much foot traffic as we have on our greenway, I mean, there's not a trip that any of us make up and down Main Street and we don't pass 10 people on that greenway. I think it's a great way, like you said, to spread awareness, right, as long as we do it the right way, right, with regards to those we're responsible for. So yeah, I think it's a phenomenal idea.
In regard to that, we do it the right way.
Right.
And Emily even mentioned, maybe limitations or any guidance that we may give on how to carry this project out. I would recommend that the town manager and our Parks and Rec director give them that guidance on number of ribbons, placements, all the technical details, if you will, so that it's an asset and not a distraction. And I mean no disrespect towards domestic violence, believe me. As Mayor Pro Tem, I've been when they were meeting up at Berrien and so forth, and those days and so forth. But thank God I never grew up in that situation. But my church has been closely aligned with Sister's house, and I've been up there a number of times delivering things and so forth. And my heart breaks for those ladies, it really does, and the children, and even helping paint some rooms and so forth, things like that, so. I can't, and I won't even make that comment, I imagine, because I can't even imagine that, but you see it on TV and movies, and you read about it, and so you can kind of picture it in your head, and even that is just horrible to think about, having to spend your life in fear, or part of your life in fear, and so forth. So, yeah, that would be our recommendation, is that the town manager and Emily, you and Emily Watson, get with Emily and give her the guidance that she needs on how to properly do it, if that's okay with you folks. Okay. Do you need a motion from us or anything?
Please, going back to our rules, yes,
Okay.
we can't put anything on there unless you all approve.
Okay.
I make a motion that we allow Emily with my sister's house to place ribbons around the town with the guidance of Ron Wyatt and Emily Watson.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Unanimously passed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the next one, and I believe the next one is also a town manager overview of town council's upcoming regular meeting.
Consent agenda, first 4 items on consent are, I would say normal, but I don't know that anything's normal.
Fair.
I'd say regular items. Number 5, town schedule of fees, water meter fees, reconnection fees, tap fees, and cost of supplies have increased. And that's why we're back asking for some of those changes. I think a couple of them you've already changed within the last year. It's not that we can't understand them, it's as they have changed supplies wise, we're just asking you to change them once again. Any questions on those?
To me, they all seemed like typical year-over-year raises, except for the 2-inch water meters under admin. You know, I was going with it doubled.
Yes.
That just seems weird to me.
We waited almost 4 months for the last 2-inch meters to come in.
Oh, really?
Yes,
So that's why you don't have to see a similar effect on the 1-inch, because the supply.
correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
The old law for economics, supply and demand, you know.
You're telling me.
Anyone else have a question on that?
Number 6, Autumn Leaf Apartments facade. The DRB recommended unanimous approval. Any questions on that? Number 7, Tractor Supply facade review. DRB again recommended unanimous approval. Number 8, ordinance to amend the town Troutman Code of Ordinance prohibiting parking of vehicles in front yards. That is starting to be a more regular occurrence. We've had a couple citizens complain about their neighbors doing such. And I think that speaks for itself, but I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
I'm directing this to you, but I'm a copying Lynn on it. And when you say residential, obviously, you know, RS and RT, those are the 2 obvious ones. But you get into, in the front yards, if you get into something other than just something as simple as RT and RS, does this cover those as well, where you have single residential or even duplexes? I mean, I guess someone could park in the front yard of a duplex for that matter. So, whichever one wants to answer, I mean, to extent, you know, what do we mean by residentially zoned? What does that cover in terms of, if you just want to list me the classifications, the categories?
Well, like you said, it would be the RS and the RT. Those are the single-family fire right zone categories that we have. But we also have an RM district that we typically goes through conditional zoning, which is also residential. So it would really apply to any category that allows residential, it's a residential zoning district.
Okay, gotcha. And this is kind of looking at parking in the grass, and not like if they've got a circular drive or a.
Correct,
The-
that is correct, and it specifically states that in the ordinance that's been drafted, that they can park on a designated parking spot. They just can't park in the grass.
So you know me, I'm always looking for loopholes. What if I want to wash my car?
I think that's temporary. I think what the intent is.
I just saw that at all times, you know, and that's what I'm like, how firm are we on that one? You know what I mean?
You know, I think the intent is that the ordinance is trying to prohibit people from using their front yard as a parking lot. I think that's.
I knew my point wasn't really valid, but that's the only thing I could come up with when I was reading this.
You know, it's a question to be asked, and, but again, I think I put that under the common sense category. You know, if you're there temporarily washing your car, then it's obvious, but if it's there overnight or day after day, you drive by and it's in the front yard, then
Because I think
this
it's
covers it.
a lot of the like HOAs, that's the language they use is overnight, right? Where they don't permit, like certain trailers and stuff like that on
I think a lot of those in the street that I would think a lot of the HOAs already regulate this in
Yes.
subdivisions. They probably would not allow parking on unpaved areas as well. But we do have areas in town that don't have HOAs, so this is just sort of filling that gap and closing that loop.
Sure.
Any more discussion on that one? Questions, man?
How do you feel about this, Chief?
I don't know, would the enforcement of this fall under code enforcement?
It would.
Code?
Yeah.
Okay, well then.
Yeah, I mean, and I do have a question, because, you know, if the ordinance comes out, officers are gonna get called on, you know, Easter. Everybody's at grandma's,
Oh,
and they're parked there for 4 hours. Are they in violation of this ordinance or not?
That's a good question. Like I said, I think the intent, maybe we need to add some time limits to it, but I think the intent is in long-term parking. I think if someone's having a get-together and there's some people there for a few hours, you know, the code enforcement officer is who's gonna follow up. I don't think you all have.
Yeah, well,
any
they won't be there when he comes back.
Correct.
so there you go.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, just to clarify, if we get calls, hey, you know,
Yeah, it's definitely a code enforcement issue, similar to nuisance with like, tall grass and that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Okay.
We're sending notices of violations. It's not a civil citation or civil penalty, so it would really just be that NOD process that Shane
You know, I see the situation like, you know, HOAs will limit how many cars can be parked in a driveway or out in the front. Well, if somebody's having a Saturday night party, obviously, you know, but unless the HOA is anal retentive or something, you know, they're gonna say, this is just a party, it's a few hours, and
I think you said you've gotten calls about this, right? So there, we have habitual offenders.
We've got 2 in particular,
Right, so that's more, yeah.
and they're not doing it on Easter, and they're not doing it.
Right, I think that's what it is. I think if the code enforcement officer gets a call on Super Bowl Sunday, I think he's probably gonna use his discretion, right? Yeah, but I think if it's Wednesday in March, yeah, I think we probably, well, yeah, that wouldn't be the Super Bowl then. Yeah, so I think we'll be good. March is.
again, I look for the pattern, you know, I don't
Right,
look for
exactly.
this temporary, I
We've
look for
made
the
it
pattern.
this many years without it being an issue. And quite frankly, if we get somebody washing their car or it being a holiday and some anal retentive neighbor is calling because they're trying to visit for a holiday, then we can go back and amend it to be a specific time and/or overnight or something of that nature.
Sure.
If there gets to be too many of those calls to the code enforcement officer. I really think the calls that we have gotten are the intent to keep a neighborhood looking like a neighborhood instead of a car lot, somebody's doing a brake job for 2 months.
Gotcha. That sounded pointed.
Could have been.
I was just saying, where some of us are from originally, this would cause a revolt.
Well, you know, I equate this to the people that put the inside furniture out on the front porch. You know, you got the living room sofa, that you don't want anymore, just sitting out on the front porch. I mean, I
had one
equate that to
sitting
that.
there
It's
for
just,
3 days, Paul, come on.
No comment. I had one for 2 years. Missed my front porch couch.
is there any more on that one? I think we're all in agreement on it, that
Yes.
common sense is the idea and focus here. Okay, all right, sir. You want to move on? Doug?
Number 9, approval authorizing the acquisition of property at 144 South Main. That was the Dollar General. This is at our town attorney's request. Even though we had a motion authorizing me as town manager to proceed with the contract, this clarifies specifically that the purchase price was 1.5 million. And that you all acknowledge that fact and to proceed, or acknowledge that I did proceed at your direction. Number 10, approval to transfer capital reserve funds to the account to replenish fund property acquisitions, ensures a clean audit for the next year, and avoids a visit to LGC for a loan. Did I word that to your satisfaction?
Yeah, so basically we've got some money that's been saved up, you know, over the years in our capital reserve funds for the town. And so, like the town manager said, instead of getting the loan, we could use this money to replenish our general fund, you know, where we have made the purchase for these properties. And basically it's just to replenish funds, but it frees up that money so that we could put it into an account elsewhere, drawing more interest.
All right. No questions. Number 11, approval to amend town policy number 30. It's rotation record policy. Chief Watson and I recently had a citizen come and talk to us about the record policy we had in place. Chief Watson went and investigated other policies and surrounding agencies and towns. Our current policy is outdated and refers to another agency, specifically the Highway Patrol, for a lot of direction in our current policy. And it's really a town policy that we have, even though I'm going to stop short of saying 100% of the time, but I can't find an instance to where we as a town have required rotation. It falls under the police to call for records. And this one, the policy that is in your packet provides for more clarity of expectations from the towing service and definitive pricing. And it also asks for inspections from the police chief or his designee, and is monitored by the police department. Excuse me, be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Excuse me. While we did not verify, there has been, one thing to add, I apologize. We did not verify, what's the word I'm looking for, Chief? For the gouging, price gouging, but there was possible, or has been alluded, that one towing service has been gouging customers, and by changing the policy, it allows some teeth of the police department to ensure that that does not occur in the future. I'd be glad to answer any other questions if you all have.
How many record services do we have in rotation?
We use, we have All-American Towing, J&J, Skeets, Ultimate, and Empire right now there's 5 for a rotation. Skeets has the contract for what's called run and done for police chases and DWI seizures. So they get all of those. That's because who the state picked.
They get what now again? I'm sorry.
All DWI seizures and run and done from police chases, because those vehicles are seized and delivered to the state, and once the person's convicted, they're sold and the money returned to the school board.
Okay, that's Skeets. Okay.
Chief,
Yeah.
how does it work if a citizen's involved with a collision and Roto is involved? What if that citizen wants to use a certain
Well, it depends, and in the policy, if, this is kind of what generated this, is if the officers get there like, hey, who do you want to tow? They don't know, we call for the rotation record. Once the rotation record gets there, once they're hooked up, and we found this was common with all, we looked at Concords, Hickories, Mooresvilles, Carver, North Carolina, and High Points. Once the record's hooked up to it, it's that record. If it's not hooked up, then that record is released, the rotation record, and the owners can, choice can be picked. There's things in this policy that allow for, if that's gonna mean traffic's backed up for another hour, then, at that point, we're gonna have to get it out of the road. But the record, if it's released, if it's canceled, arrives on the scene and it's released, it goes back to the top of the rotation.
So the citizen says, I want record A, B, and C, not A, B, company A to come.
Yeah.
Th-
They're
that's
getting
what
company
they
A,
get.
yes,
Okay.
yes. As long as they ask. Now, we have a situation where people go, I don't wanna know who I want, so officers call for rotation. Well then, 20 minutes later, they're like, oh, my dad called and he wants this company. Well, depending on where the rotation record's at that time determines
Gotcha.
the solution on that.
So is that just gonna be a judgment call by the officer
Yes.
at the time?
Mhm. As long as the rotation record has not hooked up to it, then they'll be canceled.
Unless it's gonna be an unreasonable
Yes, unless it's an
delay,
unreasonable
right?
delay.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I did like that you have, one of your employees will be responsible for making sure the rotation and they all, because, I remember going through this in West Virginia, we had like 4 record services and they always complained, well, they got more calls than I did, or this, that, and, it was like, it became a bear sometimes, just trying to count the calls, and a lot of times because they don't respond because they were somewhere else.
Which
And
we,
you have to go to the next person.
Which we have our own rotation separate from the sheriff's office that econ administers. And they log, hey, we called them, they didn't answer. And so then we can go get those logs, and then we can go also to the actual record services, and, we have things in here that provide some penalties for failing to respond to calls and failing to answer your phone after a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I thought of all the issues that, I remember us going through, and it seems like you addressed a lot of them. Only one thing you did have is a misspelling.
Okay.
On section 6, first sentence is broken glass, not glass.
Okay, we can fix that.
Some of the drivers need to be in class.
I was gonna say, I think that may have been a subliminal thing
It was
there.
like, I really read through it, I thought it was things we went
I
through
think I
before.
got that and fixed it on the one that's
Okay.
on the sign.
And,
I'll make
but
that.
it did address a lot of things I remember being such a thing. And at that time, it was still, the police tried to make sure it was all back to law office to do it.
Which we're the only surrounding area that the town has a policy. Everything else is the police department has a police department policy they administer. So one thing we do is every year we'll have to analyze the fees and probably come back to adjust those. Our fees haven't been changed since 2011. So they were being capped that they were only being able to charge like $150 for a tow, when now it's $350.
Yeah, no, sure, I know.
So the companies that were part of our rotation were not, all but one was not getting adequately reimbursed, while we had reports that another was being overly reimbursed.
Very much so.
But as far as if the officer on site, does he check with the administrator to see who's in rotation next, or how?
He just calls to communications and said, I need, 2 rotation records. And the communication center has, in the computer system, it pops up, this one's next. So that if he's need 2, number 1 and number 2 are called.
So they'll have the information for Troutman
Yes.
specific?
Yes.
In there, okay.
George, can you tell me what section that's specifically in? So I can
6.
double check. 6?
Yes.
The title on 6 is what, responsibilities. He's missing an I.
This one.
An I and responsibility, in the actual title of section
Oh, okay.
6.
Spell check.
Mine stopped working for some reason.
I'm just glad I beat Mr. Hinkle to a correction in the packet.
Listen, that was 3 o'clock
That tells
Saturday
me
morning
how-
studying this, so give me a break.
Stopped working this week for some reason. We have it on our computer, it just quit.
Anybody else have a comment or a question?
I think it's good.
Number 12, annexation request of, I'm afraid to pronounce that. Properties with 3.5 acres. Direct the clerk to investigate and set a public hearing date, unless there's any questions or issues. And then number 13, you see who the employee of the month is. Her boss will be ready. 14 will be library report. Roman numeral 5, annexation request. Non-contiguous applicant Troutman Commercial Properties LLC, 7.5 acres. That is the area on the left just before David's Market.
Question on that,
Sure.
the house,
That's it.
it's gonna be, is it part of that 7.5 acres? I was driving by today, I noticed somebody was evidently still living there,
Yes.
and, okay. All right. I wasn't sure if that house is
It's being
in,
rented.
but that is a part of the deal and probably will be raised and all that.
I would assume so.
Okay.
The last person that bought it, which everybody's plans changed like everything, they were not gonna sell it, and they were gonna do a particular thing to it 5 to 10 years. But they sold it, and who knows what's gonna happen, but
Okay. All right.
and then 16 would be a rezoning request, depending on what you do with 15. 17 is MI Homes. This would be the 49.62 acres. Their Sterling Properties Holdings, they're kind of autumn leaf Perth Road. They have requested that to postpone to October, to defer to October. Staff has no objections. That, of course, depends on you all.
Do we need to take care of that Thursday, or can we go ahead and do it today?
That's what I was gonna
Sorry,
ask.
didn't mean to step on your
I hate
toes.
to ask the neighbors, they're not knowing, what's gonna happen. We go ahead and make that decision.
Posted,
Excuse me?
but you can, unless Gary objects, you can go ahead now and say you're okay with that deferment.
Would I guess my only question would be, would that help alleviate confusion on Thursday, or will that create more confusion on Thursday? If we do, like you said, if we do have people that are gonna.
In my opinion, it helps alleviate, but go ahead.
I think that we have to do it in the meeting so you can open the public hearing.
I think you're correct.
Okay.
That way
That
we don't
is
have to
correct, right,
react.
Gary?
That way we don't have to
You
re-advertise.
could continue without opening the public hearing.
I think we have to re-advertise it if we don't open the hearing, is that correct?
You don't have to open it, they can just make a motion to postpone.
But my,
But do we have to advertise again?
No, no, make a motion to continue.
I mean, I have no problem doing what you suggested, but again, I'm just saying, if it's the consensus of this, that we can let some folks down there know so they can pass along to their neighbors, so you don't have a bunch of people showing up and then wish somebody let us know and having to pile back out and go back home and come back next month.
And staff did post it on Facebook that they have requested a deferral. We did it on the town Facebook page and then the planning Facebook page, just so that they knew that this was a possibility for Thursday evening. So we have tried to get the word out, so hopefully, if y'all have any other suggestions of a better way to do that, but typically social media helps in that situation.
That's a
I've also been
double-edged
surprised
sword.
that sometimes people know things before we do.
Yeah.
I've had people call me and say, I hear something's gonna be deferred. So-
Well, I've got one of the neighbors, or a couple of the neighbors that, I'll be quite frank, not that it affects my decision, but, I started mentioning yesterday and then I didn't at church when I saw them. Because, so they could pass on to their neighbors, because I didn't want them coming up here Thursday night and being disappointed in that, because I know that happened before here a couple months ago, and, some people were a little upset about that, because then how they gotta go back home and come back next month. But again, obviously, we have to do things by procedure and by law and so forth. So I just want to feel comfortable, maybe letting those folks know on a personal level that it's the consensus, nothing's been done legally or passed legally, but it's consensus that this will be deferred. So, if you want to pass that on to the neighbors, they can still come, still welcome to come to the meeting, but chances are, or most
Gary
likely.
said we were good being as we've advertised it, you're good to go ahead and defer tonight, and we did not have to re-advertise. You can still defer.
We could do it.
Well, no, you could agree that there was a consensus, but I think because you legally advertised for Thursday night, that would be when you can make a motion both times to defer it. But I think because of the legal advertising, you still have to do one Thursday night.
Well, let's just
You
keep
can do
it.
it twice.
We can make a consensus tonight that we agree with the staff.
That-
And that way the board got it.
You know, I was just, something that I feel comfortable that's our consensus, so that, I don't come in Thursday night and egg on my face, and all of a sudden, the rest of you say, nope, sorry, Hinkle, you're out of luck, and then I got, folks upset at me, thinking I don't know what the hell's going on, excuse me, what the heck's going on. Okay, well, if it's a consensus, then I'm glad with that. Just again, I'm just trying to, alleviate a little confusion on the part of the neighborhood down there, so they don't have to make 2 trips up there. So I'm fine with leaving it as is based on just what I'm hearing, and we'll defer it Thursday night.
Lynn, you going here at Thursday? Number 19, this one, I think is one going to be your most contentious things this week. Applicant Mad Monkey Garage, Tales of Lake Norman. I thought she pulled it. She's on here still?
She, not to my knowledge, she hasn't.
Okay. The request is to amend Article 621 and 622 Troutman UDO to allow wall murals as permitted, signed to in heavy industrial HB. As you all remember last month, Tales of Lake Norman is the lady that requested to have a mural on her angled fence. And the artist was here telling us how ignorant we all were, that we didn't understand the federal law on protection of murals. We allow murals and the protections of murals by federal law, but as I put in you all's notes there, he has also told several people in the community, not only is his mural protected by federal law of Mad Monkey, but the folks who own the building with the soda murals, they want to change that mural to be a Lake Norman scene with him as the artist and a real estate mural sign there to change that, and that he's going to change more murals around town, which he's certainly allowed to do, but for him to be a quality mural artist that he claims to be, one of the first things any normal mural artist does that is good is they go and make sure that whatever art they're doing is permitted. And in this situation, he's not done it at all, except to tell us how bad we are, and me specifically, that I speak with a forked tongue. I love mural art, regardless of where you see it. But in this particular case, we have had several citizens and 2 owners of this very building to complain that they don't like a gorilla or a monkey being on their building. There's several citizens to complain that they don't like this gorilla being on that building. I'm glad I'm not in you all's seat, because you've got some people that love the gorilla being on the building, and then you've got several that don't. The people that's gonna show up one way or the other, one of the persons that made money by painting it may or may not show up. The one that paid for it to be up, I'm sure will be here. Whether or not the other business owners that wants to pay over a mural that we paid for to be up will be here to support it or not, I have no idea. But this is one of those that clearly is going to get a good bit of social media time as to whether people like the gorilla or they don't, and whether Mad Monkey is happy or not, who knows. But we had an ordinance in place that allows mural art to be in certain places, and had people applied with that and abided by that, this would be a non-issue. But
So they didn't come to us at all for
no, sir.
requests, of course.
No, sir. And when we explain that, all we get is adjectives thrown at us, or me specifically. It hadn't happened to you all yet until you make a decision. I'm not laughing.
I think you're looking forward to this.
One thing, Lynn, I hope I'm not stealing anything you might want to say, but, you know, part of this, if it's passed, will be the DRB going forth will approve. It's not that if we open it up to HI district and highway business in addition to central business and neighborhood central, that the DRB will have something. So, you know, if you have something like, you know, a gorilla or Adam and Eve with fig leaves, you know, or living naturally, that some people may not find, you know. So, you know, we've got DRB that will kind of be a part of that. So it's not the Wild West necessarily, if that, you know, is what we do Thursday night and pass this. DRB will probably have some adjectives thrown at them in the future, possibly. You know, and I was thinking in terms of, you know, possibly somebody painting over, as Doug pointed out, something we paid for the murals, soft drink murals and so forth downtown. That we do have the DRB in there. So, again, it's not gonna be the Wild West, but this, again, doesn't necessarily mean it's all gonna be, you know, sunshine and lollipops either.
That's one of the things that, to me, can get into federal violations is when DRB, Gary may have more input on that, just like you said. To me, when you start scrutinizing one versus the other, that's where it certainly can get into federal violations of what is art and what is not.
You have to read the sign,
Yes,
then you can't regulate.
right.
And so curse words are allowed. And you can have some pretty bad stuff in signs, and that's allowed because you can't regulate content.
Right.
You can regulate the size and location, and that's about it.
I think there was something there that they can't advertise. You know, they can't put something in that mural to advertise.
That's in the ordinance now. that it can't
Like
be
you got
language.
the monkey
It's not a
fixing it,
sign.
we're working on a car or something, you know.
It can't be a sign, in other words.
Here's the problem that I have with this whole thing, okay? This person went and had a sign, not a sign, but a mural, okay? And now he's coming to us to consider changing the ordinance and allowing this. Where's the penalty? I just can't go build some structure without going to Iredell County and getting permits, can I?
In some circumstances, they allow you to then pay for the permit and then inspect it to make sure if it's not beyond a certain point that it can't be inspected.
Why are we not saying that this person has to paint this over and then come for approval?
That's certainly your prerogative. But by the ordinance in place, a mural's not allowed there, period.
So it's illegal.
Correct.
So why are we even considering it? If it's
Anybody
illegal.
can apply for us to change the existing ordinances.
But see my point, okay?
I do.
You painted it, and now you're coming to ask my permission.
Please make it
It's
legal
like-
now.
Concepts in the law called seeking permission or asking for forgiveness. So he's asking. for
Where's the
forgiveness.
penalty? Why can't I impose a penalty, Gary?
Well,
Is he,
Well,
is
there
code
could be a
viol,
penalty.
is our,
could be a penalty because it's a code violation.
okay, so are we fining him now?
I don't know.
Well, typically what we do with a code violation is we go to the person who's committed the violation, and they typically say, how do I make this legal? What can I do to remedy it? So we have to give them those options, and in this situation, the only way to make this legal is for them to amend the ordinance, which they came, filled out the application, and are coming before you all to ask for that. And then you all, as elected officials, it's your job to decide, do you all want murals in or in heavy industrial? Because the thing is, this is a text amendment, so it won't just apply to Mad Monkey, it'll apply to and that's really what we need to focus on. Is do we want murals in HI and HB throughout our?
And every one of
But
those
I think we're
buildings,
forgetting that
all
it was
of them
done.
there.
Yeah.
I have no problem with this gentleman coming to ask for permission for a mural if there was no monkey on the wall, okay? What I'm
It's
mad
not a
about
monkey.
and upset about, okay, is that he just went and did
I
it.
understand.
And there's no, it's like telling your kid you can't have candy, and then 5 minutes later, you see them eating candy.
And see, the problem I'm struggling with this, I've been reading, is I personally think murals just cheapen the town anyhow. I don't like any of them. But I can't, somebody asked me a direct question, why do you put one over there on Randy's? Remember that big one on the side of the building? And you don't have another one somewhere, and do it right across the street. Not just whether it's a grill, but just any of them. But what's the difference? I just have a hard time understanding why he couldn't put one on that building. I still agree he ought to ask for what he's, we ought to know what he's doing, but, you know, we put this big thing over on Randy's, and he'd have done more except he couldn't get there because of electricity line.
To me, here's a simple question to answer to that. The building at Randy's had a mural on it, and the building at Randy's, the building owner said it was okay to do. His building never had a mural on it, and his building owners all didn't say it was okay to put one there.
I'm just saying, should we even have murals, period? You know, it's,
But they came to us, George, and we approved it.
yeah, that's things that I think murals just are not good. Because I look at other towns and you see some of this, like I say, you have a hard time regulating it, you know, of what they put up there.
You can have an ordinance that says no murals. You have some that are grandfathered until they.
Yeah, you got to deal with it anyhow.
Gary, something concerns me though, I mean, obviously, you know, and this was discussed or this was discussed, well, actually, the suggestion came out of planning and zoning, when they considered this about the DRB. But you're saying they could put swear words up there, they could put offensive
They could
content, or not content, but pictures, and get by with it.
It could be close to pornography. You know, we know the definition of pornography is, I know it when I see it.
Right.
Living naturally is what we're calling
Yeah,
it.
so you can't regulate content. There's some very specific Supreme Court cases about that.
So again, if, as you say, pornographic or swear words,
If you have to read the sign, it's against the law, constitutional
you say read. Now what about picture?
It's not a
Vid-
bill, which is
law. Well, that would be part of the read.
Okay, be part of the reading is, okay, visual as well as actual
I'm saying,
text.
basically, you can regulate location, size, height. That's about all you can regulate.
DRB's got no,
Now,
you know.
That's what I'm telling you. When you said DRB can, no, they can't.
Well, this one, my idea, it came out of P and Z,
I understand.
you know.
I understand. I just wanted to clarify.
That's why I'm trying, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And again, I wasn't trying to be a smart aleck to George. When we did murals, the town asked, going back to 2015, 16, when it used its own money.
Mhm.
These buildings were, most of them downtown needed new mortar. And they thought, well, to try to clean the buildings up so the downtown area looked okay, they already had murals on them. They were just so faded, you couldn't get people to pressure wash them and go back and put mortar on them. So the town chose to spend money to at least paint the old murals, drink advertisements back on them. That at least brought them up to some looking standard. And that's why the town put those two drink murals, and I think it's on my desk, but I got a picture, it's black and white,
Right.
but those two drink advertisements that are up there now are pretty daggone close to exactly what was painted up there 50, 60 years ago. So they were not changed. Now, the one that's on Randy's building now, that's nowhere near what was up there, because most of the stuff that's on that are things that we have around town now. But there were murals on the side of that building too, 50, 60 years ago. The one on the back side of the pawn shop, there were murals up there 50, 60 years ago. So there was murals there 50, 60 years ago. It's just the ones that's on the old Randy's building, those murals are different. The one that's up on the pawn shop, that was a Mountain Dew mural 50 some years ago. Just didn't have a jet ski, of course. But the murals were replaced, those were just changed. But the two that's above the ice cream shop or the deli, bakery now, those are the two that were pretty close to what they were. But that's why this town had the ordinance, and it's just been changed verbiage-wise for years, that no more murals were allowed down anywhere in town. To George's point, they didn't want no more murals.
So
They
these are
just
all-
wanted the ones that they had. They didn't want them nowhere else. Their shirt mill threw a fit at some point in time in the sixties because they wanted a big billboard. And I saw the newspaper article at some point in time, a big billboard, and they wouldn't let them do it because they wanted to, that was supposedly one of the reasons they shut down, which wasn't true. But they wanted a big billboard up there, and the town wouldn't let them have a billboard, much less a mural.
So we only allow them now in which two businesses? Central
They
business?
put Central, I believe, and,
What's the two areas that we allow?
Central.
Right now, Central Business District and Neighborhood Commercial is where they're currently allowed. And there are some requirements in the ordinance that discuss that it can't be signage. There's a sign ordinance, there's signs where people put the name of their business up there, they're advertising something. So this is considered more just an artistic rendering, that's what's allowed, currently.
I believe you made a comment the other night when we were talking about this, that if it has something in it, it would be advertisement, direct advertisement for the business. And that's why I said, you know, if they had painted that, like a monkey working on a car, would that not be a type of advertisement?
It could be
Possibly.
considered that way.
You know, repairing a car or something.
And that's an on-site sign versus an off-site sign. So you can have an on-site sign that advertises your business and that's.
But I'm talking part of a mural,
You're
though.
talking about this particular sign's on the building where the business is.
Yeah.
So off-site sign, I don't think that applies here, but, and I was just reading this Reed versus Gilbert to see, I mean, does that apply to murals or wall art, or is that just signage? I was under the impression that just applied to sign ordinances.
What?
Reed versus Gilbert.
It would be any, I mean, that's considered, I mean, murals can be considered a sign, so.
Yeah, it seems like a cheap way around. But like, if I go and I apply for a sign for my business, but it doesn't fall into, now I call it a mural. It seems like I can skirt your
Well,
rules.
there's
then.
lots of towns too that allow murals for art, and they're not signs. So, yeah, that was just my question is, does that apply?
Right, right.
Look, go ahead, go ahead.
You stated that the owner of the building that owns the place is against.
There's six owners. Two of the six, for sure, don't want a gorilla on their building. They don't want it. They want it to be painted white or some other color that they approve, but they were not asked.
So the rental is Mad Monkey, and the
Yeah.
owners aren't happy
Correct,
with that.
correct.
Mr. Amico, I presume is how I pronounced it?
That
Amico?
is correct.
He is not the owner, he just rents the building.
That is correct. He's a tenant.
If the owners don't like it, why is this our decision?
Good point.
Why don't the owners tell him to get it
And the
off?
same thing with this other lady. She is a tenant. She's not the building owner.
And we haven't heard from that owner yet either.
Well, all they're asking for is, now, they just want permission to put a sign there, which would be a text amendment, which would be your decision. Whether or not the owner wants it on the building, that's between the owner and the tenant. But what you're considering is, do you all want murals in HB or HI? That's the decision to be made. It shouldn't be based on whether or not you like this guy's mural or not, or like, do
Right.
we want them in our
And to
town?
me-
Or do we want to open it up to all these
Correct.
places?
I didn't mean to interrupt Lynn, but to me, that would be the simplest for you all to do. If the building owners make a request, we'll consider it, but you all don't want to do it.
Well, I think this issue, like I said, it won't just apply to that building, it'll apply to
Sure,
the entire town.
right.
Sure.
I think the decision to be made here is.
I agree with you, but no other property owners request
Right.
and how.
I mean, I'm
You
not
should be dealing
looking.
with the owners, like Jerry just said, not somebody renting it.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is for all, again, sorry, I'm making you say the same things 4 and 5 times, right? But this would apply to rezoning, where I lost myself here. Heavy industrial and highway business.
Correct.
This is a chunk
Yes.
of the town.
And remember, anybody can request a text amendment, anyone.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to be a property, anybody can come to you all, because this particular text amendment isn't just gonna apply to Mad Monkey.
Right.
And that's what you all need to focus on, is that, do we want these things everywhere in town? There's an HI.
Isn't highway business HB, isn't that probably one of our largest growing zoning
The
districts?
majority of the properties down at exit 42
Yeah.
are zoned HB.
Yeah.
That's really.
South of
what the
Houston pretty
request
much is all.
So,
Really make that look terrible
gentleman
out there.
came here and he's following our process.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
And it may not be the greatest process, but this is just, you know.
So at least you give me the answer of why we allow one over here and not right across the street. Because
Correct.
that's, those heavy industrial.
Correct.
And he falls in an area that's, you know, we got these big warehouses coming in and stuff, and we want murals all over them. I mean, just think how big that could be.
Holy
I
mackerel.
personally don't like murals, so I would say, I know where I'm at on this thing.
I'm kind
We
of,
can't undo what we've got unless.
I'm kind of feeling what George is saying. I kind of just want to take my ball and go home. I mean, it's, because this could get out of control.
In a hurry.
It could.
We used to think about all the buildings that are going in this business park. All of a sudden, they decide to put these big murals on. Yeah. And they can put about whatever they want to, I guess. We can't really challenge it, so. Yeah,
I just have a question, something you said a while ago, and it's just for my information, but you said, you know, you can prove murals just for art, which is not what I'm hearing from Gary. I mean, we can't regulate art, so, you know, they can, it can be, you know, something nice or something
That is
pornographic.
what Gary's saying.
Huh?
That is what Gary's saying.
Right, right,
Can't regulate what's in there.
right.
If a mural gets on a building, and
Right.
somebody paints something you don't like, you can't regulate it.
Exactly, yeah, and that's, but a while ago I heard something I thought sounded a little different.
Well, I think what my question was is, there's signage. Like, we have a sign out front that says the town of Troutman, town hall. You know, every business in town puts a sign up out front that says, you know, this is our business. And those types of signage, that's what we typically in a sign ordinance that we're regulating. What we can't do is regulate the content of that sign. And I know for an example, a town I worked in previously, we had a sign ordinance that allowed nonprofits to put up signs at certain locations that were off-site that for-profit businesses couldn't. Now, that's illegal now because of a court case, a Supreme Court case called Reed versus the town of Gilbert, where they were sued and actually it went through the Supreme Court and they ruled that towns cannot regulate the content of signage. So if you're gonna let the nonprofit put it there, you have to let the for-profit put it there. So it became one of these situations where, well, if you're gonna have off-site signage, you let the church put an off-site sign, you have to let Pizza Hut put an off-site sign. So that was the outcome, but with murals and wall art, you know, I guess that's where content, I guess Gary's saying that content would apply to a mural as well. But if it's, you know, if you're not regulating that as signage, I guess that's where the question is. Because I know there's lots of towns, I think if you go uptown Charlotte, there's a parking deck that's painted. And you know, the one that's painted blue and yellow right there, she's coming up more head. Anyway, you know, they use these types of murals as art a lot of time in downtown, like Duck said, to cover up buildings that are older and to make them more attractive. You know, it has a lot of wall murals that are really just art. They're not advertising anything, but I think that's what
Well, that's what worries me. I mean, obviously, you know, when we think of mirrors, we think of old timey, except, you know, that's why, you know, the Troutman was pushing at one time with the soft drinks that town manager referred to, you know, back in 16, 17, so forth, and we did the soft drinks, and then even the one at Randy's, I think, was paid for by, was not paid for at the time. It was paid for by,
The soft drink, Pepsi.
yeah, Pepsi, something like that. And you know, it's nostalgia and so forth, and that's all. But again, then you get, you know, somebody in there that has a little bit of a woke mind, and you put something out there that's highly offensive. And that concerns me. As the town attorney says, we can't regulate that. We can do the size and shape and so forth, but we can't regulate the content, and that concerns me very much.
And currently, I mean, we do currently allow wall murals in the CB district here in our downtown. And like, in doing some research, other towns, they have these in their sign ordinances, some of them do not. And they're totally separate, and they go through a totally different committee for approval, and they're considered more just art, or public art. So, you know, there's a difference there between the sign ordinance and what public art.
Well, if, again, then, okay, you're saying it's between sign and public art, so if we did the public art route with just murals,
pulling it out of the sign ordinance. I mean, in
You know,
hearing
then do we
this-
have any control over the content? Visual content, text content, text
I don't
content.
have to research that, but you might, I mean, as long as the town is doing it. If XYZ business did it, that'd be a very different thing. Because then you'd say, then you can have another business going, they got one, why can't we have one?
When did on the backside, when you're coming from Perth towards Maine, the town of Troutman, when did that one go up?
2019, 2020.
Maybe 2020.
I don't have a point after that. I just genuinely couldn't remember when it went up.
And that one's not paint, not that it matters.
Because again, if we do decide to swing negatively on this, there's a big one right there with our name on it. You know, so.
But
If that one's in the proper district.
Yeah, if you stay in the same district, we don't change
Yeah,
it. We just
yeah.
don't open up these other districts.
Good point.
Then there's,
Yeah.
and we could, I guess, at some point, tough the ones when they come to a mural, you know, they gotta possess of this town before they do it, even in those districts. Which it should be already anyhow, doesn't it?
But again, if they come to the town, let's say Mr. Miko had come to the town, we would have to change to allow it. We just can't arbitrarily, because he came to town,
I mean,
arbitrarily allow it,
I'm saying
nobody
only
else.
that CB area.
Yeah,
I mean,
simple business.
they still have to come to us if they put one up, right? They don't?
If it's in the CB district, they just have to come for a permit. There's no process where a board reviews it. It's currently in the ordinance. But we could definitely change that.
I mean, we'd be able to know what they're gonna put up with it. I mean, they'd have to come to us for a permit or something.
Just staff. It wouldn't come before council. But we can change, I mean, that's something you could definitely ask for an amendment on, and we could make that change in the ordinance. But currently, it's just a permitting process.
Seems like sticky. We could get in trouble doing that. Because then we're picking winners and losers, and we shouldn't be doing that. You either meet the criteria or you
If you
don't.
leave it as, I mean, to Gary's point, if you leave it as part of the sign ordinance, then it is signage.
And to me, that is why we would want it to at least have staff review, is because I've seen it in other places, not here, that some do. And just like it's mentioned here, some think, I'm gonna put advertisement up there. No, you're not. Not per our sign ordinance, you're not.
So with staff approval, which we have now, if you turn it down, then they have recourse to come to council to get us excited.
To do, to where we are now.
Yeah, it's with what we have now. They just still, if he'd have came to you with a permit like he should have for that gorilla, and you turn him down, then his recourse would come to this council. And then,
Yeah,
but
we-
he would say he'd been in CB, I mean, not, that he was just completely messed up because he did wrong.
We would-
If he was in CB,
We would
did
just
it come
be
to us?
checking that. Is he in the correct district? Does he meet the few minimum standards that are in the ordinance for what's allowed for a mural? And if he did, we would have given him a permit. If he didn't meet the standards that you all approved in the UDO, then he would have had to have come here for some sort of amendment or go for the board of adjustments or.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm wondering, like, isn't that another pathway for these folks in particular, through the
Not
Board of
in this-
Adjustments?
Not in this situation because it's really sort of a use issue. I mean, signs, a lot of times you can't really, it's difficult to do a sign variance because.
Walmart got one.
A variance of the sign,
Yes.
yeah, you're correct. But we would, in this situation, I don't know that we would have recommended that he get a variance to this. Because basically what you're saying is they got a variance to the size. What he would be requesting would be a variance for sign type. So he would be saying, I want you to allow something that's not permitted. And you can't do that with a variance.
And the sign size variance for a building that size is more understandable. If they'd have come and asked for a signs variance on that size on a building like his, the answer would have been no.
Right.
And with it, like, in other words, he could not come and say, Board of Adjustments, I can't do a mural because of the way I'm zoned, but I want you to let me. That's not within their power, that's you guys. That's
Okay.
your decision making.
Again, trying to find loopholes.
Sure. And I mean, a size variance on a 2,000 square foot building is a whole lot difference on a 1,000,000 square foot.
Right, right. Because that was the argument that they presented. It's like, it's gonna be a postage stamp on a billboard.
Right.
And we looked at the reliefs and like, yeah, it is.
And the Board of Adjustments has the authority to review dimensional and do variances to those types of things.
Right, right.
But as you say, it has to at least be permitted, it's just.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So if this ordinance gets turned down, okay, and the monkey's not allowed on the building, who's getting fined? The business or the owner of that building?
Owner of the building.
That's who we would tell to get it off of there, right?
Right,
But then he can deal with his leasing.
correct.
That monkey gonna be mad.
And-
Do what,
and
Flynn?
There's already.
And we already know two of the owners are opposed to the monkey being on the building.
Yes,
And they realize that they're gonna get fined if this ordinance gets turned down.
I think there's already dissension.
Yeah, I'm not too caught up on the, I'll call it a monkey, fine. I'm not too caught up on the monkey, but it's this expanding it into these other zones, and we're talking, what, give me a loose percentage of our town property is in these two zoning districts.
I thought that's not fine.
I'd say 40% of your commercial properties.
Right, of our
Yes.
main thoroughfares, like it's pretty much, we're opening up 21 to paint buckets.
And this goes, and I'm not trying to muddy the water, but this goes back just like our flag ordinance last month. When we are presenting facts to you all, we, contrary to social media, we're not telling y'all what to do.
Right.
We're giving you all the factual information that if you make this decision, here's all the others that's going to be affected. While Uncle Jim or Aunt Sally, okay, but what about the hundreds or thousands of others that then get to also?
Right, yeah, that's that's my line of thinking. Like, I mean, I'm to the point where I kind of don't even see the garage anymore. But I'm just like, this is going to turn 21 and it's going to look like an episode of Laugh-In. I mean, there's going to be stuff everywhere. And we're not going to have any control over the
Carnival.
content.
Carnival,
Yeah.
that's the word.
Yeah.
Carnival.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm finished. I'm
Finish
finished.
that one step.
Any other comment on this? Okay, well, we'll have to make the final decision Thursday night, so be thinking about it. We'll move on, sir. Mr. Manager?
I don't know if I can find my place. What did you say?
20.
Text amendment request staff to amend Article 5.1.5, UDO requiring landscape berm on the perimeter. As we have discussed for a couple of years now, our goal as staff at your direction has been to, excuse me, as these residential neighborhoods have come to our town, it is to try to protect the integrity of our small town feel and atmosphere of when they come here. One of the things that we have noticed with several of you as we have went exploring different things in our community is, I will use Barium Seasons that two of you all live in, for example. When you drive by Old Mountain Road, nobody can look into one of the houses there. When you turn Barium, nobody can look into any of the houses. Well, some of these newer neighborhoods, when you drive by the street that's nearest them, you can look into the front yards or the backyards or into the windows or the bathroom or whatever else they got exposed. And for most of us, that's not normal. And we are having citizens complain that we're seeing various sorts of debris or less than what some people perceive to be a good quality of life because the way whichever person lives there, they got different stuff in their yard. They don't have stuff in their yard, such as grass. They got weeds there, or whatever things they want to complain about. They're more concerned about their neighbors than their own yard. And one of the best ways to do that is just make sure it's shielded from everybody else. So by having berms there, it at least gives some more space from the roadway. Even if it's a secondary road, it keeps the space away from the road. It also, when we have some of the feedback that you all have gotten, that when a new developer comes to town, it makes them have to have more green space when they are building houses. This is one of the ways that it allows that to be done. Lynn has done some research from some of her previous places that she has been a planner and come up with a good concept. She's here for any questions that you may have about these berms. These berms are not just going to be mounds of dirt. They will be landscaped in front of and on the back side. Anybody got any questions? We'll be glad to try to explain further.
I'll just say that I appreciated when Paul and I went with you, we drove out through by Suttersville and we saw exactly what we're looking at and the new neighborhoods there. It made a lot more sense then. Because reading the berm officially, I wasn't really realize how high it needs to be. So when you drive down the road, you're not like looking straight into those properties.
I know it refers to, you know, the UDO construction, see the section for standards for construction and so forth, and maybe there's not an average or there's not a arbitrary number, but what height are we talking about here, roughly? Is there an average or?
The average for a good berm is usually 5 to 6 feet. I mean, you want to really create a good berm, it needs to be pretty wide at the base, and it needs to be pretty high. So
Right.
probably around 5. When I think of I'm trying to think of a good example of a berm, think of that neighborhood that's out Perth. On the right-hand side, there's a really nice berm behind the subdivision there. That one's probably about 5 feet tall.
She was talking down, I'm going to
Bell's Crossing,
Yes.
has that berm,
Yes.
as you get
That
past
one
it.
kind of,
Yeah.
you know, fits heights, which is something we could, but we're gonna look into, we've been looking for a cross-section that we're gonna have our engineer look at and make sure that it works from an engineering standpoint. And then we'll just have that cross-section in our construction standards, and we'll take care of that, so that we can give it to builders when they come to us, and we can say, here.
So it's not gonna be just a fixed footage number, it's gonna be, say, I'll stick out 8 feet and that's it, and then vegetation on top of that.
Correct. We will make sure that it's landscaped, but we will also make sure that the width is adequate for the height. And there's some action, things like that.
Will it be on a case-by-case basis then that you will determine, you know, width and height and so forth?
It will be a statement. So the builder, the developer will have to make sure that they create that amount of space into their site plan, so that
Right.
that berm will fit between the right of way and the back of their lots.
Most places are gonna, it's gonna be about as wide as this room to have the height. From the roadway, it would be at least as wide as this room to have the height. So it's not just a mound of dirt.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand, yeah, but again, I'm still trying to get in my head, we're talking 8 foot or something,
It's probably closer to 5 to 6 feet.
5 or 6 feet, and
And then you're
then,
gonna have plantings on top.
and plantings on top, okay,
Right.
okay.
Would this apply to conditional zonings as well, or would those kind of go back into the, Tumblr.
It'll apply to all single-family residential. All of it.
okay? Because I know at some point, each one of us has argued for this in the conditional zoning, so if we can go ahead and get this on the books, then
This has been.
that'll save us 20 minutes.
Because it's also, as you know, it comes up at DRB a lot as well.
Sure.
You've advocated for that on a lot of projects at the DRB.
Yep, I like it.
Any other questions, comments on that? Consider request by CNH Investment and Holdings that fines levied in the amount of $300 for code violations of 3 vacant lots on Rumpel Street be waived. He's supposed to appear here in person. Only thing I'll say about that is, I did not see or review the letter, but Shane, as you all know, we get lots of complaints about the various things. We asked you all earlier in the year to pass a thing, and it should be, went out that once they got the notice. These lots were recently sold to him, and it would have been the first, if not the second notice that you've got to mow. But I feel fairly confident that Shane would have had in there, hey, you got to mow and we're not going to keep sending you notices. But then he moved. And then the subsequent, your lot needs to be mowed again, notices did not get to him. And this is why he's asking, hey, this, please waive these. I don't know if appropriate for a public meeting or not. I'm gonna go by this week and see if it's mowed, because this weekend, it was not. It's in violation again. So
Nobody mowed this weekend, though, to be fair.
So to me, that
There
would
was a lot of
be,
rain.
so to me, that would be, I did.
You did? I had to mow today.
So to me,
Or I was gonna get a letter.
it would matter. I got it done before outdoors,
All right.
but to me, that would matter.
Right.
That's up to you all, if he makes his request, and he may have very logical reasons, but he will be here supposedly to
Is
make
it
it.
George?
Shane did a good job of his explanation to us, you know, in his letter from 8:30 to us about, you know, his opinion of being overgrown, and he had to be aware, because he'd already had, you know, he'd been there told him to cut it before. And just because he moved, doesn't mean, that shouldn't take him out of having to still got to cut his grass.
That goes back to Ed.
Goes back to
So I thought he had a good explanation there. That's gonna get you out of something like that.
Well, it's gonna be interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up. I intend to drive by, before the meeting and see, what the height of the grass is.
I think because it was so tall for a while, it looks pretty good right now, even though it's still.
I could be forgiving, but, what is it, shame on me, and then, shame on you, and then shame on me, twice, shame on me. So, if I forgive and then the guy, continues to do it, then shame on me for allowing him, giving him a break in the first place. I'm gonna keep an eye on that between now
I
and
think
Thursday night.
Shane made a good point of, even though he moved, he still knew he had an obligation because it's already been corrected before. So just because I moved, I didn't get your letter, so I didn't know to cut the grass. Well, why do you look at the property here? I thought he had a good explanation that's a poor excuse that, but like Shane told him, he can come to us and ask for a waiver.
Sure. Number 22, Wakefield Village Developer Agreement. It says development. Gary can tell you, we worked this several times, and it did get signed by a representative from Children's Hope Alliance, but then their attorney, did they reach out to you direct, or just let us know? Their board needs to approve it, so they are requesting deferment until their board, and they meet the same night, I believe. So their board is wanting to review it before, so,
When's our board meeting?
22nd.
27, that's what Gary said, so,
What we're talking about, number 22 with Wakefield,
yeah,
is this what has to be done by December?
yes. Well,
September now, December is not too far away.
I'm not sure what you mean has to be done.
their extension for their contract,
I guess
it has nothing to do with us.
Oh, it's
They-
December of 24 now?
To 2024.
December.
We got another year?
When did that happen?
That's news to me.
Oh, it's in the development agreement that they have until December of 2024 to present a deed to the town. On the purchase of the
They're- We're talking about two different things.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I don't know if we
It
should
sounds
be
like
talking
Jerry and
about
I are thinking
Gotcha.
of December of 23.
Yeah.
Y'all are good. I don't think we should be talking about publicly. We're all good.
Right.
Okay.
We're good.
Let's move on, sir.
So there'll need to be a motion, obviously, because it's been advertised to continue all of that to October.
So we didn't do
That
it on
night.
Thursday.
Thursday night, right?
Yeah,
Thursday.
might as well just keep those
And
together.
as I said, indicated in my email, if you have questions for Lynn and I,
Miriam
this
to
is
Wakefield.
relatively complicated agreement. That's what it's not.
Right.
There's a lot of reading there.
All right.
Consider authorizing town attorney to initiate eminent domain for a sewer pump station against dependable development and/or successors at Sutter's Mill, Westmoreland Road. All I can tell you there is, our in-town engineer reached out to Sutter's Mill, folks. 2 emails was great, and the guy asked how much you wanna pay, and Benji said, I thought you would donate it to us, and then he quit responding. And then I asked, no response, couple emails, checked with their staff to make sure I was responding to the right person. They told me this is who I needed to respond to, sent an email, sent a certified letter, no response. We've asked Gary to get involved. Have you ever had a response?
No, I
So-
sent 2 letters.
So we are proceeding forward. You all have a copy of the map in your packet, and it's unusable land to only just refusing to respond.
As part of the process, we'll need to hire, the motion will need, authorize me to initiate the lawsuit, but also for Benji to do the survey work and to, employ an appraiser. I've contacted 3 appraisers. One we've used in the past, mostly Woody Parker out of Mooresville, is unavailable. I've also contacted Underdown Ball. Apparently they're doing a bunch of appraisals for the county on some sewer. They're out of Elkin, I believe. Their quote is not to exceed $5,000, and they can get an appraisal, if they get retained by the end of September, they'll get an appraisal back to us by December the 15th. That's not a problem, according to Benji, on the time frame. And then they also charge $200 an hour for things like meetings, depositions, court, that kind of thing. The other is Brian Bryant, BBG out of Charlotte. He is an MAI appraiser. Underdown Ball is not. And his quote is $3,900 for the appraisal. He's done a good bit of work for Moore. Well, and Woody Parker referred him as well. So those are the only 2 now that I have.
Tell them that MIA certification.
MAI is a master appraisal institute. Under balls are what you would call a general real estate appraiser. MAI is considered a master, a much higher level.
But I hear-
That's good and bad. I mean, sometimes those guys are eggheads.
What?
Eggheads.
Oh,
I mean, if you ever,
That's a good law term right there.
if you, I mean, he was a wonderful guy, but if you ever knew, what's his name, Staney, Holland, great guy, but he was the worst witness in the world. He was an MAI. I can get more quotes. I don't think we're gonna find anything much different. I'm guessing they'll come in close to the same. Like I said, Ball says not to exceed 5,000, and so it says 3,900. I tend to recommend Brian at BB&G because of the 3,900, and you've got the MAI.
How many attempts have we made to try and get this done with Sutter's Mill?
Well, Benji contacted, Doug's contacted, and I sent a letter to the president of the company overnight, so you got a receipt showing they received it. I wonder if they're having problems. Tell you the truth. And then I've sent them a letter under the statute where we have to send them a letter saying we're gonna come onto your property to survey it and to appraise it. And that, they would have gotten that letter recently.
At least 8 times unanswered.
8 times unanswered.
And these are the Sutter's Mill development.
Gary, can you, town manager, come up with some sort of a sample motion to be made? You had a lot of,
I hear my one out.
yeah, if you would, please, there were a lot in there that, to get it right, if you could Kind of like we do consistency statements.
Just to
so,
get
you
your
know.
informal direction now, do you have a preference on these appraisers?
Does this tell us anything
Whoever's
about that
recommending,
develop-
if you recommend one or
development,
the
He said
other.
Brian, right?
I would, just from what I've seen in the quote, I would tend to recommend Brian, I don't know,
If he can go with the time frame,
he can do it, he said once they hire, he can do it in 3 weeks.
that's him.
That's-
Recommend Brian, right?
And where's he, he's out of where?
They have offices all over the state, he's out of Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Gary, what if dependable development goes belly up and we do
That
win
makes
that
it
suit?
easy.
Does that matter?
Well, I'm not sure, what do you mean by
What if they-
that?
what if
If
that
they file
whole-
bankruptcy?
Yeah.
We'd have to go to bankruptcy court to get permission to pursue this case.
So is it worth, is this development in trouble?
Well, I don't have any idea. Now, the dependable development, was it Carolina Land Design? I can't remember what it was called. They had the property and then it got moved over to dependable, which I think are all the same people. So, I don't know why they're not responding. I think didn't the town tell them at one point, you don't do some things, we're not gonna give you some permits?
Yep.
So it could be payback by that.
I did.
So, I mean, who knows what their reason is.
I think we probably.
Maybe they're waiting to see what
move
our
forward.
appraiser says, and then they'll go, okay.
Gary, what was that first quote? on appraisal?
Pardon?
What was the first quote?
First quote was, no, not to exceed $5,000 involved. Right, BBG was 3,900.
If you would come up with something, as I
Yeah.
say. Okay. All right, we're ready to move on, folks?
Number 24, consider reappointment of person to inside alternate board of planning and zoning. Concern there, it's not with the individual, it's just the process. When I checked with Lynn and also the clerk, we've not made the public aware that there was a position on the board that's available. Being as we are scrutinized by the public, that we are not making them aware that we have positions available. When the board did work down there, we put on there that we have positions available. For example, there was just one Lynn posted, I think, that said Board of Adjustments and something else, I believe.
I did post this after we talked.
After we talked, she's posted it. And again, I stress, nothing wrong with this individual. I'm not implying that there is. I just wanted you all to be aware for transparency's sake. We as staff did not make the public aware that there was a position. And I would suggest that you may want to, even though this term expires this month, we may want to postpone at least a month and see if anybody else happens to throw their name in there.
Is that a more common practice, even on a reappointment? Because I would think on a reappointment, we wouldn't need to advertise.
Well, there's several things that happens. And again, I'm reluctant for this conversation because somebody could say that I'm talking about this individual.
Right.
I stress, I am not.
Right.
I have nothing negative to say about this individual. I'm talking about if we don't do it for every position, then what happens when you have somebody who does not perform the way that you want them to? And then you go out and advertise that one,
Gotcha.
and
I see.
and you don't on this one, so then you're playing favorites. So we do have some board members who are not performing the way they should be. We had a planning and zoning board member just this past meeting that was told, you can't participate. Then they turn around and participated anyway from the audience. I mean, at some point in time, there's got to be some responsibility, and we as town staff and or as council have to start holding people accountable for their actions on these boards. And again, nothing to do with this member on this board. To my knowledge, they have done everything that has been asked of them, and they have done it responsibly and admirably. But if we get into situations, we advertise for this one, we don't for that one, then we are selecting people without there being an open process to see who all is available.
Right.
And there may be two positions that's available, for example, to where we may get a good candidate for a position while this one is a good one and needs to be reappointed. We maybe can recruit that person to go to a different board or a different position
Right, yeah.
if we knew their name was available.
Right.
And that's the only reason that I pointed out in those situations. When we submitted names to the county commission 3 months ago for appointment to a particular board, they did not take you all's recommendation. They appointed a different person because they also thought, well, we thought we was reappointing somebody. They was unaware that they had been issues before because that person had performed poorly in their position, and they did not read anything that was submitted to them, and they themselves said, well, we're county commissioners. Well, if you all submit a name after going through a vetting process, and they're not going to take the time to read it, as I expressed to them, why should we go through the time, effort, and waste our time to submit names to them if they're not even going to care what you do? So to me, we either skip the whole process or don't have boards and even waste staff time when their boards have no say-so whatsoever. And in that process, an advisory board that is going to be run like a circus and behave like a circus, it gives us all a bad rep, and it gives people in the community who are looking for leadership and who are looking for us to have some sense of stability to advise them how can they come up here and state pros and cons. Every citizen in our town should be allowed to voice their concerns, their pros, their cons, and be treated respectfully without being called liars and cheats and thieves and everything else.
So the good thing with this one, if we do wait another month, the board meeting is still for September being late in the month, and it's late in the month October, so it really wouldn't affect as far as missing a meeting if we waited a month.
I think that would be the case, and I think it gives us an opportunity of trying to do it right going forward for all the boards and all the positions.
I think you made some great points, especially even maybe just casting a wider net. I think it's brilliant.
And
Just to
again,
maybe we get some names on the list that we wouldn't have gotten if we just reappoint somebody. So I like this.
do what?
Her term's up the 14th of September, so she would not.
Oh,
be
she
able
could, so she wouldn't be able to do that meeting, okay.
But I do stress, there's nothing wrong with this individual, and I'm not saying that there is.
She's an alternate.
Yeah.
Normally, so probably.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got here, we'll put that, again, a part of beginning the meeting, something we'll defer until next month. As I've got that down, if that's be the, well, I'll put that down, and that can be part of whoever's motion, we adjust the agenda Thursday night to defer this till October's meeting. Cat a little bit, to say, we're casting a wider net just to see, and to make the public aware, to do the right thing, and as it's been discussed.
Well, it's come up at this council before, how we had an issue getting people involved. But that's saying, if we're not taking every opportunity to put it out there,
Right,
then what are we crying about?
correct.
So I think that's great. I think it's unfortunate that she's gonna miss, or that this candidate here is gonna miss. Maybe we can reach out to them or something. Let them know exactly what we're thinking. So,
And being as I talked about the planning and zoning board meeting last month, I do want to stress on public record, this person did nothing wrong at the last meeting. they behaved exemplary at the last meeting. I want to stress that.
Duly noted. All right, okay, so we're up down to public comments and so forth.
I think we're gonna have a couple good ones. We'll see what happens.
Okay,
I think I might get another bag of jelly beans.
George and I are gonna have something on our end.
Oh, okay.
well, at this point in time, are we ready to go into closed session?
Yes, sir. Only thing we need is staff, clerk, and our attorney, and you all.
And a motion.
I guess we need the motion too. Now, the 143318, is this personnel or discussions with the attorney or, okay, discussion with attorney, okay. Does somebody want to make a motion, we go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session for legal matter 143-312.1183.
A second.
Bye, everybody.